Just give me 1 second. Okay, we're live streaming this as well. I'm going to call a calendar. We'll figure out what all we're going to do in the order in which we're going to do it. On the main calendar that's entitled Final Hearing, our first position is Marcus Ellis. And Ms. Patel is actually here in court, if you're wondering why it's a similar background. It's kind of exciting for me to have someone here. I remember Mr. Ellis. All right. So what are we doing with Mr. Ellis today? We won't necessarily tackle it right now, but what's the plan?
So, Your Honor, we were trying to get Mr. Ellis into behavioral health treatment court. He was just interviewed this week. What is outstanding that Mr. Tucker indicated is that because his last diagnosis was so long ago, he has to go and get re-diagnosed. Grady or 10 Park Place is not allowing for new inpatient appointments, but I arranged for a teleconference for him to have on Tuesday with them. So they're going to call him. After that, we're going to have to take it from there because they might need more in order to do a formal diagnosis. But we're on track. Ms. Hodge has provided us with an offer that we are likely to accept as long as he's actually accepted into the program.
Okay.
So it's going to require just a little bit of time because Mr. Ellis doesn't have a cell phone, so it took forever just for us to get HTC to talk to him. And so after that, we should have a better idea as to whether, but it will be a plea, it's just a matter of when.
Okay. Ms. Hodge, were you able to hear what Ms. Patel was saying? I'll repeat it. We need to implement, and this is a court needs to implement a way for folks who are in court to see and hear the Zoom world and vice versa. And we don't have that right now. And if Ms. Patel talks through Zoom, which I'm going to have her do in just a moment, I have to mute mine or we get this crazy feedback and it's bad stuff. But Mr. Ellis, her client, is here in court now. And it sounds like he has arranged a teleconference, or Ms. Patel on his behalf may have arranged a teleconference appointment with the folks at 10 Park Place because BHTC needs a more current evaluation of his condition, that there is some documentation, but it's sufficiently aged that BHTC has said we can't admit him just based on that. So the goal is to get something more current, and they're not quite there yet. Ms. Patel added that the offer you had made was one that it sounded like was acceptable to her client, but that it was all contingent on Mr. Ellis getting into BHTC. And that's the hurdle we need to clear now is getting a more current diagnosis from 10 Park Place so that that can be shared with BHTC and they can reach their own conclusion about whether that diagnosis qualifies Mr. Ellis for that treatment program. Does that make sense?
It does, Your Honor. And we're working towards resolution, so I'm satisfied with that announcement. I would, however, like to point out that the victim's mother contacted me yesterday regarding the modification we made to the bond. Defense counsel and I had agreed that Mr. Ellis could return to his grandmother's home because the grandmother was going to help make arrangements for Mr. Ellis to get in touch with his social worker. But the victim's mother is concerned because her children also are at the grandmother's home. So I'm not sure if that's something the court wants to address right now or after the call of the calendar, but I do want to make you aware of that's
okay.
Something that came to my attention yesterday. And
yeah, let's finish calling the calendar. We got into a little more detail about Mr. Ellis than I just wanted to know what we were going to do today. But that'll be the first thing we work through because that sounds like a complication with the bond. All right, so we'll wrap that up. It doesn't sound like Mr. Ellis's case is going to be resolved today. We'll need to set some deadlines for him to get the additional materials that BH BHTC needs. Position 2 is Shawn Turner. What did you think was happening with that today? We're just having a status update?
It should be a negotiated plea. We have a representative from Grady Act here today as well. And so we understand that he's on his way in an Uber, and so hopefully it should be plea today.
Okay. Ms. Hall, it sounds like Shawn Turner is going to be a plea today. Mr. Turner is en route, we're told, and there's someone from Grady Act here as well. Is that news to you, or is that your expectation?
That's my expectation, Your Honor.
All right, well, as soon as Mr. Turner gets here, we can take that up. Position 3 is, a lot of these are Ms. Patel, Kiera Burden.
And Your Honor, that was going to be PTI. I was supposed to have the paperwork sent to me today so I could sign this burden up. The individual sent it to the wrong email, and so she said she should get it to me in the next half hour, 45 minutes. I can print it, and then this burden can be on her way as soon as I get her copy.
So this is paperwork from one of the PTI programs.
Correct, and they've interviewed her and spoken to her, given her the details. Ms. Hall was in the loop with that conversation. The issue is just having the order signed as well as the initial intake paperwork.
Okay. Ms. Hall, were you able to hear Ms. Patel?
Mostly, yes, Your Honor, and I agree with
Okay. Okay, so it sounds like PTI, we just need to get that paperwork, and then Ms. Burden can sign what she needs to sign, and we'll be good to go. All right. Position 4 is Tori Bass. That's Ms. Snyder's client. And I need to get clarity from the parties and Ms. Nelson if today is effectively a final plea date, or if calling today that is too soon in the process. I don't know how far along this case has gotten, if discovery has been exchanged and we can effectively treat today as the final plea hearing. And I'll take the cue from you, Ms. Snyder, because you're the one who needs to be comfortable that, yep, because I know there was an offer conveyed, Mr. Bass is not interested in it, but we need to figure out what we're doing after that. And so that's why I thought maybe it would be final plea. I don't know what else we'd be doing today unless we'd be saying, all right, here are the consequences of not resolving the case today, and go from there.
Yes, sir. I've spoken with Ms. Hodge. I am missing some discovery. I don't believe that other than a dismissal, Mr. Bass is interested in taking any sort of plea. So I don't think it's a problem to treat today as a final plea. I just want to make sure that we get this discovery we're missing before any potential trial.
Okay. Well, we'll get all that on the record when we handle Mr. Bass's situation. And have we confirmed, is LGK40, is that Mr. Bass?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, great. That was the main calendar. We have a bond reconsideration for Gregory Watson. You're handling that, Mr. Franklin?
Yes, Judge. If we get a chance, though, I would like to get popped out to a side room with Mr. Watson. Received an offer yesterday that I'd like to discuss with him.
If Mr. Watson is in custody, he's not going to be on this call.
Okay.
This is the defendants who are appearing are either sitting here in court, and we've got, I think, 3 of them, or they're dialing in. The basic calendar was a notice calendar where notice went to the defendants, but we have a few add-ons, and I wasn't sure how we were handling them if they were in custody, but we'll work through that. But I don't have a means of connecting you to someone in custody at this time.
No, Watson was gonna be, I think he had waived his rights to a hearing, and that's what we were gonna just hear the bond, is what I understood.
Yeah, we had previously had a bond hearing and we had waived rights at that point in time. And my intention going forward was to address bond today. And then Ms. Hall and I made up a lot of ground on some discussions last night. So I was going to relay that to him. If I could have a moment to just kind of reconsider if I want to go forward with the bond.
That's fine.
Yeah.
He's in line. I skipped over Shelley Griffin. That's already been resolved in the sense that the virtual PTI order has been executed. So she was on the calendar, but we're not going to worry about her situation. That was taken care of. And then we have 2 probation revocations, meaning 2 people with probation warrants. Again, we don't have the defendants here, so I'm not quite sure what we do with them today other than agree that there's going to be a hearing or something. Although one of them, Anthony Brown, he's already had his revocation. So if you were waiting to talk about Anthony Brown, that's the only reason why you're here. You're free to go. The other is Timothy Fox, with a case, a Z case, but real serious charges. And in looking at the allegations in the probation warrant, it's some serious stuff. But we're not going to do Anthony Brown. Ms. Nelson tells me that that was already dealt with. So that's the order of business. We'll talk about Timothy Fox. We can talk about Gregory Watson if that's what you want to do, Mr. Franklin, but he won't be connected. And then we do have here in court, Mr. Ellis. Was that Mr. Turner who walked in?
Yes, Your Honor.
So Mr. Turner is here, Ms. Burden is here, and then Mr. Bass is on the line. So why don't we just go in the order of the calendar, unless there is someone who has an urgent need to go first.
Well, Your Honor, if Ms. Patel is doing 2 pleas, can we just put Mr. Bass's issues on the record?
Let's see what Ms. Patel says.
No objection.
She says no objection. All right, we'll do that. So we're going to go on the record. If you're ready, Mr. Forte. This is position 4 on our final hearing calendar, State versus Tori Bass. It's indictment 19 SC 172212. Ms. Snyder represents Mr. Bass, who is on the line, and Ms. Hodge represents the state. Mr. Bass, you're charged with cruelty to children in the 1st degree, aggravated assault, and family violence battery. What we're going to do in a couple moments is have Ms. Hodge tell me what the state's recommendation is and where she thinks the case is in terms of discovery. I'll hear a little bit from Ms. Snyder, and then I'm going to have some questions for you. So I'm going to need you to go off mute. Can I confirm that we can hear you?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. That's great. Excellent. So Ms. Hodge, why don't you get us started by telling me if you think discovery is complete in Mr. Bass's case?
I do, Your Honor. One of the items that was outstanding for discovery was medical records. But I did confirm that the state does not have medical records. The victim went to the hospital. However, she left before she received treatment. So no medical records are available.
Okay.
That is the only item that I'm aware of that's no, Ms. Snyder, that I'm aware of, but Ms. Snyder can speak if she has something different about that.
Sure. We'll get to that. And well, why don't we'll stay on discovery. Ms. Snyder, what is it that you think you're missing in the case?
I'm missing photos and witness statements and the 911 call,
What do you have?
the police reports.
Okay. Are you new to the case such that discovery would have been provided to someone else, or this is something you should have had a while ago?
No, this is a incident from 2015 and it was indicted right before the statute of limitations. When Mr. Bass appeared for plea and arraignment in front of Judge Reeder, Kelsey Jones Connor was the ADA handling the case, and the complaining witness came to court with Mr. Bass and spoke to Ms. Jones Connor about the situation and that she was not trying to go forward with these charges. It didn't happen the way it appears to have happened in the police report. And Ms. Jones Connor was going to go back and look for a dismissal. And then she got moved out, and it just kind of lingered. But I know Ms. Hodge was able to speak with the complaining witness, and we are just waiting for her supervisor to give a decision.
Okay.
So I don't think anybody was really pressed on getting discovery.
Got it. But you believe from your review of the limited information you have that there's a 911 call out there, that at least one witness, if not more, gave statements to the police, and that they're photographs.
Yes, sir, that's all indicated in the police report that I was able to print from Odyssey.
Got it. Ms. Hodge, are you in a position to get those things to Ms. Snyder sooner rather than later?
I'm not sure, Your Honor. They're not in the file. One of the reasons the state's recommendation was to reduce this case from felonies to misdemeanors was because of the age of the case and because of the difficulty with getting a complete file on the case. So my attempt to resolve it was just to reduce it to misdemeanors and offer DVIP. He has not accepted that recommendation and has asked for a full dismissal, which Ms. Snyder is aware that I'm not in a position to do that. And so I have sent that request to my deputy, and I'm just waiting for an answer.
Okay.
And based on her answer, we will either dismiss or see if more efforts can be made that haven't been made. I don't know what hasn't been made, but more efforts can be made to provide discovery, or we just will be forced to move forward with what we have.
Okay. Well, Mr. Bass, I'm going to turn to you now. I need to make sure you're following what's going on. It sounds like the offer the state has made as of today would be to reduce your charges to misdemeanors. And so if you were to enter a plea, you would be put on misdemeanor probation, with the one condition being that you complete a family violence intervention program, which relates to domestic violence and better interpersonal interactions with people close to you. Do you understand what the state would recommend if you entered a plea?
Yes, I understand.
Okay. Do you understand that if you were to enter a plea today and I sentenced you in any way more severely than what the state asked for, you would be able to withdraw your plea? No questions asked, just, you know what, Judge, I'm not interested in that. I thought this was what I was going to get. You're giving me something more, whether it's more time on probation or a fine or jail or whatever it would be. If it's a more severe sentence than what the state asked for, you'd be able to withdraw your plea. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. After today, if you decide that you want to enter a plea, and I've heard your lawyer loud and clear that you're not interested in pleading to anything, but things change. If you decide later on down the road that you want to enter a plea, you're free to do that. But if the sentence that I impose is one you're not happy with, that would not be a basis for you to withdraw your plea. So that's what would change from today. Today, if you entered a plea and the sentence was something other than what you had negotiated, your lawyer had negotiated, if it was worse than that for you, you could withdraw. But if you were to enter a plea tomorrow or next month or next year, in this case, even if it's to the misdemeanors, if you don't like the sentence I give you, you'll be able to tell me that, but that will not be a reason for you to be allowed to withdraw your plea. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The other thing I need to make sure you understand is that while Ms. Hodge today is telling your lawyer, we'll reduce this to misdemeanors in an effort to try to work that out, Ms. Hodge is not legally bound to keep that offer open. She may tomorrow open up her case file and say, oh my gosh, here's a confession from Mr. Bass and here's video footage of what happened. You wouldn't be able to say, wait a minute, I don't want to go to trial. I want that misdemeanor offer that I had today, June 5th. You understand that you don't have an ability to force the state to keep the offer open. They may keep it open. They may make it even better, and they may dismiss the case. But you don't control that. You understand?
Yes, I understand everything. So.
Great. So understanding those things, which I find that you do, is it your decision today, Mr. Bass, to say no thanks to the offer and have your case move forward? Or do you want to resolve your case today with a misdemeanor plea?
Nah, I want to move forward because I'm innocent, and I had my daughter. She come.
I don't want you to say anything more, Mr. Bass. I'm not, today isn't a day where I'm going to question your decision. That's 100% your decision. And you may have 1,000 good reasons for making it. But that's a conversation for you and Ms. Snyder. So what we'll do then is move your case towards a trial. That doesn't mean there's going to be a trial. That just means the next time we're together, we'll be talking about trial if you haven't somehow resolved it because the state dismissed it or you figured something else that you're going to do. What is a reasonable timeline, Ms. Hodge, to give you to let Ms. Snyder know we're dismissing or we're not dismissing, and so I better get you this discovery that is outstanding?
I would ask for 2 weeks, Your Honor.
Okay. I will have Ms. Nelson check in with Ms. Snyder and Ms. Hodge at the end of June or sort of late June as to where we are with this case. If it's going to be a dismissal, it needs to be dismissed so Mr. Bass can move on. If it's not going to be a dismissal, then we better figure out what discovery is out there because that'll make a big difference as well as the case moves forward. So you can let your deputy know, Ms. Hodge, that we'll be looking for that answer within 2 weeks. Otherwise, we'll start moving this case in the direction of a trial.
Okay,
Anything else,
thank you,
Ms.
Your Honor.
Hodge, for the state in Mr. Bass's case?
Yes, Your Honor.
What's that other thing?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said, is that all? Nothing else, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. Ms. Snyder, is that all?
That is all from the defense.
All right. Mr. Bass, I appreciate you dialing in and joining us virtually. Ms. Snyder will let you know whatever's happening next. Did we have a good address for you? Did you get something in the mail from the court saying that there was this hearing today?
Yes, I got it.
Good. All right. If you change your address, you got to let folks know. Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thank you. And that concludes my business, Your Honor. May I be excused?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
You too. All right. Ms. Patel, which of your cases would you like to handle first?
Your Honor, I have Mr. Brett Taylor with Brady Act, and he has an appointment at 2:30, so I was hoping maybe we could get him out of here.
Let's do that. So you want to do Mr. Turner first?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. We need to figure out how we're going to do it so that Mr. Forte and Ms. Hall can hear while you guys are going. So I don't know if that's going to be you on Zoom or you on using the big microphone at the podium. I want to make sure you and Mr. Turner are at the distance you guys need to be. And so I'm not sure the best way to do that.
I was thinking I could have a laptop at the podium with Mr. Turner, and then when Ms. Hall is asking questions, Your Honor could be on mute so that Mr. Turner can
Sure.
answer those through the laptop.
I'll stay on mute unless there's something I need to say, and you can by default not be on mute. But why don't we get that set up to see if Mr. Forte and Ms. Hall can hear if you are live.
Ms. Hall, can you hear me? Mr. Forte?
I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
He nodded yes.
Ms. Hall, were you able to hear Ms. Patel?
Yes, Your Honor, I was able to hear
Okay.
her.
All right, I'm going to go back on for a second so that we can get this on the record. And Mr. Forte, just bear with us as we're bouncing between competing Zoom systems here in court. If at any point you can't hear, let us know. And same with you, Ms. Hall. So this is position 2 on our final hearing calendar, State versus Shawn Turner. Mr. Turner is here in court with his lawyer, Ms. Patel. We have Ms. Hall representing the state remotely. Excuse me, it sounds like this is a plea. Mr. Turner is charged with robbery in indictment 19 SC 171556. Mr. Turner, if we're going to go forward today with your plea, you need to be put under oath. And the person who's going to put you under oath is Ms. Hall. You may be able to see her on the screen in front of you. She just waved. That's Ms. Hall. She's the prosecutor. And I'm going to mute my system in a minute. She's going to ask you a bunch of questions about your rights as a defendant and a bit about the case. It's important that you answer her truthfully and completely. So if she asks you something that you cannot hear or you don't understand, let me or Ms. Patel know that so we can work through it with you. Will you do that? I need you to answer out loud. Okay, if you press the button on that microphone so it turns green, great. I want you to bend the microphone towards Mr. Turner a little bit. Let's try that again. So will you answer out loud when folks ask you questions? Yes, sir. Okay, great. I'm gonna mute me and let that Zoom go on. So Ms. Hall, when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hi, Mr. Turner. Can you please raise your right hand for me? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you should give in the matter currently before this court should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you please state your true, correct, and legal name?
For a sec. Sorry, Mr. Turner, you don't need to talk in the microphone. I think you can talk straight into the computer. So just lean towards the computer when you're answering, and we'll see if Mr. Forte has a better chance of hearing you, okay? Why don't you say your name?
Mr. Turner, can you? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you get that, Mr. Forte? I'll re-ask. Mr. Turner, can you please state your true, correct, and legal name?
Shawn LaTroy Turner.
Thank you. And are you at this time taking or under the influence of any alcohol, drugs, or medicine?
No, man, I take medicine.
Have you been able to take that medication today?
I take it at nighttime.
Okay. So you don't need any medication to help you understand this proceeding right now?
No, ma'am.
Okay. How old are you and how far have you gone in school?
I'm 42 now, be 43 next month, in the 8th grade, that's when I stopped.
Okay. Are you able to read, write, and understand the English language?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand that you've been charged with the offense of robbery by force, which carries a minimum and maximum of 1 to 20 years in prison?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand that you have the right to plead either guilty or not guilty to that charge? And if you plead not guilty or remain silent, you may receive a jury trial?
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
Have you had enough time to speak with your attorney, Ms. Patel, about all the facts and circumstances known to you regarding the charges in this indictment, including any potential defenses?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you need more time to discuss this case with your attorney?
No, ma'am.
Are you satisfied with her services?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Counsel, do you waive formal reading of the indictment? Do you waive any and all defects in the indictment, including with respect to the defendant's name? You got that, Mr. Forte? Ms. Patel, can you speak up a little louder? Ms. Forte didn't hear your answer.
Waive for the purposes of this plea only.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, have you been arrested on these charges?
Yes, ma'am. I got arrested on the robbery charge. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I asked you that because the state is unaware of any, the state is unaware of any outstanding warrants that are related to this charge. Do you or your attorney know of any outstanding warrants related to this charge?
I don't have another charge. I don't have another warrants.
Okay. Mr. Turner, do you understand that this is a negotiated plea of guilty, which means the state will recommend to the court a sentence of 3 years probation plus the Grady Acts program for you?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, the court does not have to accept that recommendation. The court can sentence you to the maximum on this charge, and that's that 20 years to serve. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
Okay. Do you understand that this is a guilty plea, which is permanently recorded on your criminal history?
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
Do you understand that this plea may be used to enhance sentencing on other convictions in this jurisdiction as well as other jurisdictions?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand that if you're currently on probation or parole, your probation or parole may be revoked based on you entering a guilty plea today?
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
Okay. Do you understand that if you're placed on probation of any kind, you cannot violate any laws, any criminal laws of any governmental agency or any special conditions of probation without being subject to revocation for the balance of the sentence?
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
Okay. Do you understand that you're not allowed to possess or use a firearm while on probation?
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
Okay. Do you understand that if you're not a United States citizen, a guilty plea conviction will affect your immigration status and will result in deportation, just as a conviction at trial would? And this is true regardless of any advice by your attorney or anyone else.
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
Do you understand there may be other adverse or unfavorable consequences to you as a result of your guilty plea conviction, just as there would be from a conviction following a trial? For example, your guilty plea may affect your right to vote, the right to hold public office, the right to serve on a jury, the right to obtain a passport, the right to receive, possess, or transport a firearm, or the ability to obtain employment.
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
Okay. Do you understand that by pleading guilty to a felony, if you use, receive, possess, or transport a firearm, you will be guilty of a felony, which may carry a sentence of 1 to 15 years in prison?
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
Do you understand that you waive any and all defenses, including any mental health defenses, by entering a plea of guilty?
I understand.
Do you understand that if you went to trial, you have the right to a trial by jury, the right to see, hear, and confront witnesses called to testify against you, and the right to remain silent and not incriminate yourself?
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the following rights? The right to a trial by, I'm gonna list.
Understand. Okay. Yes, sir, Mr. McBurney.
I have a long list to give you, Mr. Turner, and I'll signal you when I'm done giving the list. Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the following rights? The right to a trial by jury, the right to remain silent and not incriminate yourself, the right to confront witnesses against you, the right to the assistance of counsel hired by you or to court-appointed counsel, the right to the presumption of innocence, the right to testify on your own behalf and to present other evidence, the right to subpoena witnesses and compel the production of evidence, the right to subpoena witnesses and compel the production of evidence, the right to have the charges against you proved beyond a reasonable doubt, and the right to appeal if convicted of these charges after a trial.
Now speak.
Yes, Mr. Turner.
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
Okay. Has anyone forced, threatened, or promised you anything to get you to enter a guilty plea?
No, ma'am.
Is it your decision to waive these rights and enter a guilty plea because you're in fact guilty?
No, ma'am. Yes, I'm pleading guilty. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to ask the question one more time, Mr. Turner.
Okay.
Is it your decision to waive these rights and enter a guilty plea because you are in fact guilty?
Yes, ma'am. Pleading guilty. Yes, ma'am.
All right. How do you plead to the single charge of robbery by force in indictment number 19SC171556?
Guilty, ma'am.
And is this guilty plea freely and voluntarily given with full knowledge of the charge against you?
Yes, ma'am. Guilty, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand that you only have a limited right to appeal this guilty plea conviction?
Yes, ma'am. I understand. Guilty, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you understand that you only have a limited right to appeal this guilty plea conviction?
Yes, ma'am. Guilty. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I just want to tell you one more thing, that you have 4 years from today to file a habeas corpus petition to challenge the voluntariness of this guilty plea. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Turner.
Okay.
Your Honor, had this case proceeded to,
Okay.
Your Honor, had this case proceeded to trial, the state would have proven that at the Buckhead Martyr Station, I'll give you a physical address in a moment. The Buckhead Martyr Station on August the 17th, 2019, the defendant physically assaulted the victim, Mr. Jason Fry, F-R-Y. He went up to the victim and asked if the victim had anything to give him. He gave him some change out of his pocket, and he continued to follow the victim, after which demanding the victim to either buy him a breeze card because somewhere he had to go the next morning, or when he didn't do that, he demanded him to give him his breeze card or that he was going to beat him up. The victim at that point was terrified of the defendant. The card was snatched from the victim by the defendant. The victim immediately got the Martyr police, who immediately got the defendant, who was standing over by the area where you might add money to that particular breeze card, at which point they apprehended the defendant. We've spoken with our victim, and the victim is not interested in punishing the victim for taking his breeze card. He just wanted his breeze card back. He actually thought this was a case that had been resolved a while back. Other than that, Your Honor, the defendant does have 5 prior felony convictions. I've been working with Ms. Patel to come up with a good resolution for him. He was revoked, and I'm sure she'll go into details about all this, but he had an open case in DeKalb where they revoked him and then added the condition for Grady Acts. That is why we decided to go ahead and add that as well and just go ahead and keep him on that, because apparently he's already started that program through DeKalb County in that case. But other than those 5 prior convictions, which if you don't know what they are, I'll give them to you. Just let me close one screen and open another.
I'm good.
Okay, that's all from the state, Your Honor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Officer Crawford, do you have any information about any open probated cases beyond the DeKalb case we just heard about?
No, Judge, he has no open cases, just that DeKalb case. Sorry, Your Honor. Oh, just went wrong. No, Ms. Crawford. Oop. Ms. Crawford, could you repeat that again, please? He has no open cases, just the one case in DeKalb County.
Thank you. All right. I need to say a few things to you, Mr. Turner. So the medication that you take at night, do you know what it's called? Okay, and when you take the Haldol, does it help you sleep? Great.
Judge,
you took it last night?
Judge, I can't hear anything.
I'm gonna take it tonight
Judge.
when I get back home with the Hoover.
Okay. Did you
Judge.
take it 2 nights ago?
Yes, I did, Mr. Burton. I did.
Why have you not been taking the Haldol?
Because I just got my shot. That's when I didn't take it.
Okay, and
Because it's 2 Haldol. It's a Haldol shot and a Haldol pill. I couldn't take both of them at the same time. So I got off the shot now with the pill now. It's in my mama's room. My mama's room now.
okay. And is that where you stay, at your mom's house?
Yes, Mr. Burton.
You know where that is?
Yes,
Judge.
by Edgewood Counterpart on Foot Street.
Okay.
Your Honor.
Your mom has the medication and she makes sure
Yes.
you get it.
Judge,
Yes.
Fantastic.
Judge,
Your Honor.
Okay.
Your Honor.
Well, Mr.
Judge,
Turner, do you have any questions about the things that Ms. Hall has been talking to you about?
Trying to lay on the computer.
Yeah.
No, I don't have no question. No, Mr.
Okay.
LeBron.
Okay, so you took that guy's MARTA card yourself?
Yes,
Judge, I
I
can't hear
did.
anything.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, I did.
all right.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Turner, the fact that you didn't take Haldol last night, is
Yes.
that making it hard for you to understand what we're doing
No,
today?
sir. No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. Got it. Ms.
Judge.
A minute.
Paul is waving at us right now.
Your Honor.
Yes,
Sorry, we've been trying to get your attention. We were missing. Mr. Forte missed all that.
okay. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Then I need you guys to go mute for a minute.
We're on mute. I'm gonna turn this speaker off.
Okay. All
So
right.
you guys are having a conversation. I think that Mr. Forte couldn't hear what the defendant was saying. So from the whole medication and all that, he couldn't hear any of that.
All right, let me recap where we've been. I asked Mr. Turner about whether he'd been taking Haldol. He explained that he gets a shot, and when he gets the shot, he needs to not take the pill for a few days. And that's why last night and the night before, he had not taken his Haldol. I asked him, this was the most important part, if the fact that he did not have Haldol last night made it difficult for him to understand what we were doing here today. And he said emphatically, no, it did not, that he understood what was going on here today. And then I was about to talk about the indictment. I've sent the indictment to the printer. I'm gonna go get it off the printer in a minute and have everyone sign it. Ms. Hall, you have any issues proceeding with a copy of the indictment?
No objections from the state, Your Honor.
Okay. Well, I'll ask Ms. Patel and Mr. Turner some questions in a minute so we can limit the number of times we have to bounce back and forth with these microphones. I do find there's a factual basis for Mr. Turner's plea. He acknowledged to me that he took the gentleman's MARTA card and that he's sorry for that. I also find that Mr. Turner's plea is knowing and voluntary. He's indicated that he understood his rights and that he is not having any difficulty understanding things, even though he didn't have the Haldol last night. He's ready to take some tonight. It's kept in his mom's room and he lives with his mom. I also find that the plea is voluntary, so I'll accept it. I'm going to sentence Mr. Turner pursuant to the Probation Options Management Act, so that if there's small issues on probation, that doesn't need to come before me. I will follow the joint recommendation and sentence Mr. Turner to 3 years probation. I will ask that he be assigned to a mental health probation officer, and it will be a special condition of his probation that he participate in the Grady Act program and accept the care that they provide and report regularly to whatever appointments or group sessions or whatnot that Grady Act requires. I'm going to now ask Ms. Patel a few questions, so we may have to toggle between microphones. Do you, Ms. Patel, want to get the computer in front of you for a second? Let me know when you're unmuted.
Unmuted, Your Honor.
All right. Can you hear me, Mr. Forte?
Yes, Judge.
Great. Ms. Patel, do you waive proceeding off of a copy of the original indictment?
Yes, Your
Do you have any questions or concerns about the sentence that I've imposed?
Honor. No, Your Honor.
Ms. Hall, do you?
I waive and I have no concerns, Your Honor.
Okay. And Ms. Hall, I'll sign for you. Mr. Turner can sign and Ms. Patel can sign, but do you authorize me to sign the indictment for you?
I do authorize you, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Patel, do we need to hear anything from the gentleman from Grady Act who came here? Okay. Mr. Turner says we're okay, but I'm going to ask Ms. Patel if she was thinking that there was something that we'd hear from Grady Act.
Your Honor, we had Mr. Taylor present just in the case that you had any questions about the program or how Mr. Turner was doing. And we are very grateful that Mr. Taylor took time out of his day to come here in court today.
I'm familiar with Grady Act and the good work it does. I also appreciate that Mr. Taylor came down here. Has Mr. Turner already been working with Grady Act, or he will begin as a condition of this sentence?
When I was locked up, I had just got rid of.
Your Honor, he has already been working with Grady Act.
Great.
I think since January.
So Mr. Taylor indicates that Mr. Turner's been working well with Grady Act since June of last year, which actually would have been before the incident. So hopefully they'll double down on the treatment that they're providing Mr. Turner. I'm going to go get the indictment off the printer and have everyone sign it. I don't think we need to do that on the record. Ms. Crawford, do you want to share anything with Mr. Turner while I'm going to get the printer, the indictment?
I will need to get an address for Mr. Turner so I can give him his report instructions. Ms. Patel.
And Ms. Burden, I did finally get that paperwork, so as soon as I get a moment for him to let me go print it, you can sign it and then get your copy. Depends on which direction the judge wants to go, but Ms. Burden doesn't have to do anything, so you'll likely be the next person that the judge talks about. Well, we got issues if your mom is saying she doesn't want you at grandma's house. Mr. Turner. Focus.
All right, I am back with the indictment. Was there anything else, Ms. Patel, that we needed to cover in Mr. Turner's case?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Hall, anything else?
Nothing from the state, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, Ms. Hall.
Was there anything else, Ms. Hall?
Nothing else from the state.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we're going to go off the record now.
Right.
I'm gonna give the indictment to the deputy in just a moment. Ms. Patel, you and Mr. Turner will sign in the appropriate places. I've signed for Ms. Hall, and I'm that.
Thank you.
And you have. Maybe next time.
Mr. Turner. All right. May I approach your honor?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Turner. Look, my friend, make sure you do what Brady Act asks you to do. So you're gonna meet with probation, but mostly you just gotta go where Brady Act is asking you to go. Right? Thank you.
All right, my equipment is back on. If you could turn your speaker, excellent. Let's do, who would you like to do next?
I have paperwork for Ms. Burden, I just need to print, but I believe Ms. Hodge wanted to address something from Mr. Ellis, which was position.
Sure, why don't we bring Mr. Ellis up and we'll get Ms. Hodge live on here again, and we'll sort all this out. I don't know that this needs to be taken down. I think it can be informational. So Mr. Forte, I'll let you know if we need something taken down, otherwise at ease. So Mr. Ellis, I recently modified your bond, I think so that you could live in a different place. Is that right?
No, my uncle had passed and I went to a front. That's the only thing I was from.
Got it. It was to allow you to be around your grandmother's house because you wanted to attend services for your uncle. Okay, but as I recall, the bond modification, it didn't say this one day you could do that. If I may be crossing wires on cases, but I thought that what had been represented to me was that grandmother and some other potentially complaining witness had said it's okay for Mr. Ellis to be around. He can't live here, but I think we had removed the condition wholesale from the bond, but we don't need to guess. I'll just look and see.
I don't stay at no, I still stay 6582 Claiborne.
Which is in Fairburn, Union City. So you normally stay, and what's there where you stay? Is that your house?
I stay with my kids.
Stay with your kids. Your cousin. Okay. So here's the bond that was modified on May 29th. And you're supposed to have your BHTC intake interview. I added that. And there's no longer a stay away from the victims in this case or their location. So you still should have an ankle monitor on, I guess. You're supposed to call Grady to get your surgery done. But most importantly, so we can move the case forward, you're supposed to have, we need to get you to 10 Park Place. And that's what the teleconference is for.
And that's with his grandmother's number.
Okay.
At that location. And so that call is supposed to happen Tuesday at 10 a.m.
So Mr. Ellis will be back at his grandmother's location Tuesday morning. Correct. To have the teleconference with the 10 Park Place folks.
Correct.
Between now and then, he has no intention to be at his grandmother's?
I don't believe you need to be at your grandmother's place before then, right?
No, because normally I be at my kids' house, I be going to work and stuff like that.
Okay. So what I don't know, Ms. Hodge, if you can hear Mr. Ellis, but what he said is that he doesn't have a reason to be at his grandmother's house. He did for the funeral events surrounding his uncle's passing, but he's normally working or with his kids and not at his grandmother's place. Was there something you wanted to see the modified bond to say, Ms. Hodge? I didn't mean for it to be changed in a way that was inconsistent with what folks had decided made sense in this case.
Well, Your Honor, it was my understanding that the grandmother had consented to allow him to come to her residence to use the phone so that his BHTC reps could contact him. However, the victim, who is his sister and the mother of the juvenile victims, called me yesterday, and she was quite upset because she said that apparently there was an incident at the grandmother's home and that she is concerned that her children are also always at the grandmother's home.
Okay, so if we need to modify the bond again, we can. I guess I'm a little confused because I thought the state had green lighted this bond modification.
I had, Your Honor. Yes,
So then
I had, based on the conversation with the grandmother.
Okay.
And it is the grandmother's residence. And I
Sure.
did inform the victim that I spoke with the grandmother who said, this is my home, and she was okay with it. And I explained to her that ultimately the goal is to get treatment. And if the grandmother is helping to facilitate that.
Yeah, and it seems like it would be the grandmother's call and not anyone else's. If she's going to allow Mr. Ellis into the household, someone else can't object to that. I mean, they can verbally object, they can fuss at you, but if—
And she did.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it. But I guess I'm not sure of a solution other than maybe grandmother needs to communicate more clearly to all the many family members she's trying to support that circumstances have changed and Mr. Ellis might be around there. And maybe it could be coordinated differently. It is frustrating for everyone, I guess, that there's sort of one phone in all these people's lives, but times are tough and that may be how it is. So are you asking me to do anything, or you just wanted to make sure Mr. Ellis was aware that there were concerns?
Well, I'm not sure if there's much that I'm asking you to do other than I did tell the victim's mother that we really need the grandmother's home, but if she wanted her voice to be made, which she did, she could provide a statement that would be read to the court so that the court is aware and Mr. Ellis is aware and everyone is put on notice her concerns, and her concerns are addressed.
Okay.
So she did prepare a statement that she wanted read to the court. And I'm not sure if after Mr. Ellis is connected to services, maybe we can address the stay away again and see if that's necessary or what. But at this point, I'm just asking that the court would allow the victim's statement to be read.
Okay, I certainly will. Let me try to get some of the names correct. So Ms. Knight, who is Ms. Knight in this context?
Ms. Knight is one of the juvenile victims.
Okay, and Ms. Keith is another juvenile victim?
Yes, those are the two, it's my understanding, those are the two daughters of Ms. Jacqueline Ellis.
Okay, that was my next question, is who's Jacqueline Ellis? So that is the person who gave you an earful about Mr. Ellis being at grandmother's house.
Yes.
And Jacqueline Ellis is Marcus Ellis's sister.
Yes.
Okay, so as the indictment is written, it alleges that Mr. Ellis's sister is a victim and basically his nieces are victims.
Yes.
Okay.
To clarify, Ms. Hodge, Ms. Natoya Knight is an adult and is friends with Jacqueline Ellis. She's not a juvenile.
Okay. So Ms. Keith is is a juvenile. That's clear because that's the victim in the cruelty to children count. Ms. Knight was there and present, but apparently is an adult friend of Ms. Ellis. But just to help me understand, it's Ms. Ellis who has expressed alarm, consternation, concern that Mr. Ellis is back at grandmother's house. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, and it's Ms. Ellis who has a statement that Ms. Rolak is going to share with us now.
correct.
All right, I'm ready to listen.
Good afternoon again, Judge.
Good
Dear
afternoon.
Judge McBurney, I, Jacqueline Ellis, do not agree that Marcus should get only behavioral health treatment and be under very little supervision. Since day one of him being released, it has been nothing but lies and threats and stress that has come to me and my children's life. We've had several incidents where Marcus has been threatening us and lying and keeping up a lot of drama. I have reported the incident to Ms. Rolak, and she told me that nothing could be done if I didn't have proof. So I took a picture of him Wednesday when he was at my grandmother's house, which is the same address my kids live at. He threatened to slap my daughter, Jakila. This is the same child he threw on the floor. So I was calling my daughter's name so she can come outside, and my grandma Jessie told me to leave her in the house and for me to tell Marcus she wanted him to get off her property and not come back. That's when he started cursing everybody out and threatening all of us. He went on to say that he was going to contact DFACS. Then he did the same thing Thursday, cursing and threatening my kids. Our mother has a bad heart, and Marcus isn't doing anything but stressing her out every chance he gets. It's not fair to anybody because when people help him, he doesn't do anything but hurt and steal from them, curse them out and threaten them. He thinks that he has the system beat, and I don't think it will be fair for him to just do drug treatment and meds. He needs to do real jail time because he keeps doing the same thing over and over. Who is to say that the next time this happens, he won't hurt her more or even kill her? As a parent, I have to protect my kids, and I won't let the system nor Marcus hurt my child in any way. Please take into consideration what's going on in the world today. If he's not charged, my child is going to feel like she doesn't matter, and adults can do whatever they want to them because they can just pull the mental health card. This is not fair at all. I want justice for my daughter. He keeps going around saying he's not going to do any jail time. So don't let Marcus play y'all. Our lives haven't been the same since all this has happened, and it's not fair. My kids matter.
Thank you. So I'm confused. There's maybe another layer of relatives in there. We hear about a grandmother and then we hear about a mom with a bad heart. Are those two different people, or is the person with the bad heart condition also grandmother, if you know, Ms. Hodge?
The mother is a different person than the grandmother. The mother is the mother of Jacqueline and Marcus Ellis.
Okay, and then one generation older is grandmother, whose address it is that Mr. Ellis has to go as the one place in Metro Atlanta he can use a phone.
Yes, and it sounds like grandmother's home is kind of where everyone either lives or spends a significant amount of time there.
Okay, it does sound like that. All right. That's complicated. I'm going to ask Mr. Ellis a few questions. There's something he wanted to say, so speak up so other folks can hear you, and we'll see what's going on. So, Mr. Ellis, what did you want to say?
I do have another phone. My girlfriend just got an apartment Friday, and she's supposed to move all the way in next week. I will come down here and change the address to her apartment. But that whole letter she wrote is a story. My sister and my girlfriend got into it. My sister jumped on my girlfriend at BP gas station. My girlfriend got the the police report.
Does your girlfriend, the apartment she's moving into, is it anywhere near your grandmother's house?
It's in College Park, Roosevelt High.
That's fantastic. And when does she move in?
She moved in Friday, but they got.
Today's Friday. She moved in last.
Friday.
Okay.
And they got like a little more stuff to do, like paint, and do the ceiling, hot water heaters and stuff like that.
Yep. But she's living there now.
We've been going over there spending the night sometime, but we had to move all the way in, we had to get beds and stuff.
So where are you staying when you are not at the new place?
Same address, 6582 Claiborne Street.
Okay. But there's no phone there?
I got Wi-Fi number, but only thing about it, though, I was trying to ask you, is it any way I can call from the Wi-Fi number to the place at 10 o'clock today? Because the Wi-Fi app, it'll ring, it won't ring out loud. It just show you the missed call and I can call back. But that's what I was saying, I can try to be at home, her house Tuesday to use the phone, or I can call her from the Wi-Fi app and speak to them. But like I'm saying, the whole situation, my sister write it down. She don't even stay, number one, she don't even stay at my grandmother's house. She stay at a hotel. Like.
Okay, and I'm not, that may be the case. It sounds like her concern is that her kids are at your grandmother's house and she wants you guys.
They don't even be there every day. And my grandmother's trying to get her to come and get her kids. She leaving them off on my grandma and my mother. And then my brother said something to them about her about it. And she get mad because my grandma allowed me to come back over there.
Okay, it sounds like it will be simpler for you. I'm not saying you've done anything wrong here, but just sounds like it'll be simpler for you. You're the one on bond, not these other folks. If you can stay away from your grandmother's house. And if the only reason you're going to your grandmother's house, I mean, you care about her, so you want to say hi, grandma. But if the main reason you're going is to use a phone, we ought to try real hard to get you to be able to use a phone somewhere other than grandma's house, because that just seems to create friction.
I can do that. I can try to, is it in a way I can get their number and call them?
That I don't know.
So for the purposes of Tuesday, Brady calls the number.
Okay.
No one can call into Brady.
Okay.
So
He's got to be at his grandmother's.
with your grandmother, whether it's at some other location, she can come to you, but you have to be with your grandmother because they're going to call her phone at 10.
See, she got y'all, I think y'all got a house at 6, 7, 8, 8, 4.
Right. So that's where they're going to call. But after that, you don't have to be around her for anything else. We can use your other phone number.
Okay, so Ms. Hodge, I don't know how much of that you could hear because of the strange audio dynamics we have here, but Mr. Ellis was thinking outside the box a little bit, saying there are ways I can make phone calls that don't involve me going to my grandmother's house. And he was asking if he could call Grady, but Ms. Patel explained that this initial connection that's being made, Grady reaches out to you. There's not a way to call Grady. And Grady will be calling grandmother's landline at 10 on Tuesday. So Mr. Ellis needs to be there. Insofar as Ms. Rolak or you want to do some victim management, you may want to advise Ms. Ellis that she may not want to be at her grandmother's house Tuesday at 10, and she may not want to have her kid there Tuesday at 10 if she has the ability to manage that. Beyond that initial call that goes from Grady to Mr. Ellis, it sounds like we could reimpose the requirement that Mr. Ellis stay away from there. If that keeps the peace, the onus is on Mr. Ellis right now to be keeping the peace as the guy on bond. I'm not resolving the dispute between sister and brother in any direction right now. These are mere allegations against Mr. Ellis. Mostly I want to get him into BHTC because it sounds like that is something, even though his sister may not think it's the best solution, the state does, and it would get Mr. Ellis some treatment. So we're stuck until we can get that call from Grady, and that's Tuesday at 10, and they are calling grandma's house. I'm happy, without dragging everyone into court, to revisit the bond. It can just be emails if we're gonna modify yet again the bond. Mr. Ellis is saying his new residence, there will be a phone, and that may simplify things going forward. We're just not quite there.
Yes, Your Honor, and I would ask Ms. Patel to just let me know when that connection has been made so that we can disconnect him from grandmother's home.
Well, here's my issue with the state's request, Your Honor, is I'm dealing with the fact that mother and grandmother call me almost every week wanting this bond to modify because they're angry at their daughter because she doesn't live there. And they're saying, this is my house. I get to control who gets to be in my house, and I want my son there. And I have a feeling that right after we change this bond, I will be getting a phone call about another family event because now that the mother has been in and out of the hospital, there's this concern of, we want him to be able to see his mother. And so. Do
mom and grandmother live in the same place?
They do.
Okay.
Right.
It's my grandma's there, my mom and my auntie and my cousin. Like I'm telling you though, my sister do not stay there.
Okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
So that's the issue that I'm dealing with on my end, is that I understand Ms. Hodges' concern for her victim, but I've got family who owns the house and lives there that's saying that they want him there.
So here's what I'd like us to do. Two things. One, Mr. Ellis, as best you can, stay away from grandma's until Tuesday. You need to be there. Get there at 9:30. Be there early. Don't let anyone mess with the phone. 10 o'clock, you get that call. The other thing I'd like would be some communication from grandmother, whoever's house it is, whether it's mom or grandmother's, and it can be a communication that you can forward to me and Ms. Hodge. But if grandmother says, I want Mr. Ellis to be around, frankly, that's Jacqueline Ellis's problem, and not anyone else's. I'm not going to impose a bond condition saying stay away from a place where the owner and occupant of that place says, I would like to see my son. Grandma is not listed as a victim. Mom is not listed as a victim. There is some beef between brother and sister. I'm not getting in the middle of that. If this were sister's house, it'd be real easy. Mr. Ellis needs to stay 1,000 miles away. But it's not, sisters. It's represented to me that it's not. So I don't want to take a side here. I want to follow the wishes of the owner and occupant or the lessee of that address. And if that person happens to be grandma or mom and says, Marcus Ellis is welcome here, then I am not changing the bond again. But we'll revisit it if we need to. So 2 steps. 1, Mr. Ellis, don't miss that call at 10. And Ms. Patel, please let everyone know the call happened and here's what's flowing from that. And then 2, just please get me a communication from the person whose house or residence it is, and that will resolve how I don't want to get dragged back in the middle of this Jacqueline Ellis and Marcus Ellis thing. Unless, of course, if Jacqueline Ellis has a picture of Marcus Ellis coming towards one of these kids or Jacqueline Ellis with an axe in his hands, that's easy too. We revoke the bond. All right, last thing on Mr. Ellis's case. You were also, Mr. Ellis, supposed to deal with your medical situation and getting surgery. Where is that?
Okay, I went May 6th, over 19th. I gotta do what they say. They gonna see my appointment. They gonna try this money. They said, more likely they're gonna be July.
Okay, so you'll keep on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can email her the paperwork when they send it to me.
Okay.
I've been staying calling, leave a message like, they've been telling me this stuff.
Good.
And also my girlfriend have been staying in touch with her too. Like, she was gonna come in the morning, but she said she couldn't come in the courtroom. She got the paper from the Union City Police Department where my sister and Latoya Knight saw her walking on Roosevelt Highway. They jumped on her.
I don't want to get in that one either. You guys have a real colorful set of relationships. The only part that's in front of me are the charges against you involving your sister and her daughter and your sister's friend. And if your girlfriend and your sister are having issues, let's hope that doesn't result in charges either. All right. Between now and then, stay safe and stay out of trouble. Ms. Hodge, anything else in the Ellis matter?
Ms. Hodge, you're muted.
Ms. Hodge, anything else? Nope.
Sorry, Your Honor. No, nothing further.
Okay, all right. So that's it. We'll get these updates from Ms. Patel on this situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So I think that leaves Ms. Burden.
Yes, Your Honor. I just need to print the paperwork, and I wanted to make sure Ms. Hall was okay with Your Honor signing on her behalf where it has the ADA.
Sure. How do you print paperwork?
We have the fifth floor office, so
Okay.
I just need to run up to the fifth floor.
So if you want to do that, we can do one of Mr. Franklin's situations while you do that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Mr. Franklin, you want to talk about Gregory? Oh, who represents Timothy Fox?
I do.
Mr. Franklin. Great. So let's start with Timothy Fox. He's not here. All we're doing right now, and I assume Ms. Hodge, that's your case. That's a
Yes, Your
few CWAC prosecutors ago who had it, but so here's the issue. The warrant alleges that Mr. Fox was terminated from sex offender treatment. He tested positive for meth, and he didn't report when he was supposed to report in December. So I don't know if those are all technically technicals, but it's not new charges. And the question is, Mr. Franklin, whether Mr. Fox is contesting this so that we ought to set it down for a hearing where we can get the state to bring in whoever they would need to prove up those three allegations, or if this is one where, certainly with Mr. Fox's involvement, it's going to be negotiated short of an evidentiary hearing.
Me and Ms. Marshall have been playing phone tag, but from the bits of information we have been able to communicate to one another, I think we have a resolution.
Okay, so we should just get Mr. Fox on a Zoom calendar ASAP?
Yes, sir.
Does that work for you, Ms. Hodge?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, that will be the direction then, is we'll figure out what the next available Zoom calendar is that we can get Mr. Fox on.
Let's see. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then what about Gregory Watson? What did you want to talk about?
I think what I'm going to do is just put it over until our next calendar where he can physically be, visually be present.
Sure. Maybe physically, who knows if it's, I don't know which will come first, our next Zoom, or if when we're going to be able to bring over 3 to 6 inmates to have something happen in court. But whether it's virtual or in person, it would be for a plea.
That's what I need to clarify with him.
Okay. All right. So you'll talk with Mr. Watson, and we will get him on what I'll call next available calendar, whether it's virtual or not. Does that work for you, Mr. Franklin?
Yes, sir, it does.
Ms. Hall, that work for you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Then you all can be at ease until Ms. Patel comes back. I think that's it. So I don't know that Mr. Franklin or Ms. Hodge have anything more. Was there anything else you wanted to cover, Mr. Franklin?
No, sir.
Okay. Ms. Hodge, anything else from CWAC?
No, Your Honor, nothing further.
All right. Well, thank you all for participating. Before you go, let me look at the calendar here, see when we, in theory, are next connecting. I don't have anything purple for a while. I don't have anything next week. So if we're able to make something happen before the 16th, looks like our next calendar, if Ms. Nelson can work some magic, we'll let you guys know, and that could be the kind of thing we'd get Mr. Watson on. But otherwise, it would be around then. Okay.
Yeah, if all parties agree, they just send me an email. I could put something on your schedule for next week if everyone agrees to whatever they've worked out.
Okay. Well, thank you. We did a lot of good stuff today in moving some cases along. One request I've got is if you had a case on a calendar for X, a bond discussion, whatever it would be, but things have evolved and now it's Y, if you could let Ms. Nelson know, there were a couple cases for which I didn't have the file, but that's because Ms. Nelson didn't know that it was going to be a plea. I don't want to discourage progress. Progress is great. But as soon as you know something's going to be a plea, but that's not why it was originally on the calendar, just shoot an email to Ms. Nelson, because then we might be able to get the file from the clerk's office and just skip one of those steps of, it's a copy and I got to print it out and leave the bench to go do that. Might be able to have the file right here. Everything is a little more complicated because everyone's in different places, but it was a good calendar this morning, and I appreciate the work people are clearly putting in to make some of these cases move along. All right. Anything else, Mr. Franklin, from you or the PD's office? Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Hodge, as well. I'm going to stay right here until Ms. Patel comes back, and then we'll be able to work with her client, Ms. Burden, and Ms. Hall.
Judge, I'll
Have a great
stay.
weekend, everyone.
We can go on the calendar.
Did Ms. Nelson say something?
She
Yes,
did, but I didn't understand what she meant.
I'm sorry. I'll stay on so you and I can go over the calendar.
Oh, great. That works for me.
Everybody have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good weekend.
Miss Nelson, I'm staying.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, you shouldn't go. Ms. Patel, as you can see, Ms. Patel's still filming the ceiling of the courtroom.
No, I don't have the power to dismiss anybody from the Zoom meeting. I disconnected because we had a storm and the power went out. So I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. And so this is a good time to go over the calendar.
Well, we can talk about some of it right now. So Mr. Ellis, we did not, position 1, we did not modify the bond.
Okay.
He and his sister don't get along well. But we're going to get an update from Ms. Patel Tuesday or Wednesday about what's going on with that case. It's still on track for a plea, but he's got to get into BHTC first.
Okay.
Number 2 was a plea.
Yes.
3, Ms. Burden is still sitting here patiently. We're just waiting for Ms. Patel to print out some PTI paperwork. And number 4, you're gonna nudge Ms. Snyder and Ms. Hodge in a couple weeks to see if it got resolved.
Right. Otherwise, it's going to the trial calendar.
Correct.
Or, Griffin was off.
Yep. Our 2 probations, Mr. Fox, we just put him on the next available Zoom calendar because the state and Mr. Franklin have worked that out.
Okay, so that's most likely going to be a plea.
Well, it won't be a plea, it's a revocation.
Oh, I wasn't thinking. Okay.
And then you said Brown had already been taken care of. And so then that leaves Gregory Watson, who was the add-on. And it sounds like that'll be a plea. Just Mr. Franklin needs to share with Mr. Watson whatever it was that Ms. Hall had relayed to him.
Okay. Well,
So that's it. And Ms. Patel is back. She's got, did you get the paperwork?
Yes,
Great. She's filling it out, and she and her client are going to sign it. Ms. Hall, do you authorize me, assuming, I'll read to you what's on the paperwork, but assuming it's what you agreed to, you let me sign for you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Great.
And Your Honor, may I approach?
Sure. Thanks. All right, so what it says, Ms. Hall, is that Ms. Burden is doing this through AIME LLC. No payment. She'll do 40 hours of community service and an 8-week anger management program. It'll be placed on the dead docket. It doesn't have a deadline by which she's going to do that. How do you want that to work?
Ms. Hall, Ms. Role, my client and I have been in talks, and because my client lost her job, Ms. Role is allowing her to make a payment plan to submit, so she's giving her quite an amount of time to make payments towards the program. Okay,
So the program, the 8-week anger management program is not free.
The program is $600 and right, which
Okay.
is a lot of money, and so they are allowing her, as long as she abides by whatever plan is flexible to her, to stay in the program, and they won't kick her out.
Got it. So what job had you been working at, Ms. Burden? Okay, but you don't have your home anymore. Okay, all right. So you're gonna look for another form of work and then slowly pay this stuff down. Okay, got it. Do you have any questions about what's expected of you in the PTI program? The answer is yes, it will be, because if you successfully complete PTI, the state agrees to dismiss your case. Right now, they're basically putting your case in a drawer where they could bring it back if you blow this off or something else happens. But if you do what you've committed to doing, the state has committed to dismissing the charges once you can show you did the anger management, you did the community service, and you get the document from AIME saying Ms. Burden completed it. You do that, the state dismisses the charges and it's gone. So it's really up to you. The answer to the question is sure, if you do the things that you're agreeing that you do, then there's no open case, there's no indictment, there's nothing. No, they're pending until you finish this stuff. But if you finish this stuff, then there are no pending charges. Is that the answer you wanted? So I'll let Ms. Patel explain that because all you would then be expunging would be an arrest. I don't know how that works. Ms. Patel would be the subject matter expert there, but don't put the cart before the horse. You got to take care of this before anything can be expunged. So. Great. Well, we're pulling for you and you'll have lots of time in which to do it. So one step at a time, but I'll sign this paperwork and we'll get this filed in, and then you just need to be plugging in with the folks at AIME, Alternative Intervention Methods and Education, doing what you need to do. All right. Anything else, Ms. Patel?
No, you're right. I was offering to e-file it and going back to the office.
Fantastic. Then I'll sign stuff and we'll do that. Ms. Hall, anything else? Were those the conditions you thought? 40 hours community service, 8-week anger management program?
Yes, Your Honor.
Great. Okay. Then I think we're done. Mr. Church, did you have anything else on behalf of the League of Interns?
I appreciate you all letting me be a fly on the wall all day.
Not a problem. I have a judicial intern who will be starting, and so he may be hanging off the wall as well for things starting next week. So it'll be civil stuff for him next week. We'll see how that goes. An Emory law student. Mr. Forte, thank you as always. Glad that new laptop got you up and running. I think we won't be bugging you for a little while, but we'll be in touch. All right.
Thank you, Judge. Have a good weekend.
All right, you too. Ms. Nelson, is it all right if I shut this down, or do you need anything else?
Yes, no, I'm through. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.